Welcome, everyone. I'm Mariquita Solis, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 by Pastor Frank Hoffman and his first wife, Mary, and launched as the pioneer website in the United States for faith-based animal rights veganism. Today, led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we exist for all people seeking current animal rights, vegan resources, and offer decades of free animal rights and vegan content, including a huge repository of vegan sermons and Bible commentaries, animal rights strategies, free vegan authored books, recipes, upcoming events around the world, and the works of various vegan authors, poets, and artists. We host current sites for almost 20 vegan and animal rights organizations, including Stop Crush, Unparalleled Suffering, and the Committee to Abolish Sports Hunting. We also maintain nearly 25 archival sites from animal rights, vegan activism of past decades. The bottom line is that we work to unite compassionate and empathetic humans across the globe, from the past and present, who honor the dignity of each and every creature, so that all beings thrive on a flourishing planet Earth. So today, I'm excited that you all are joining us, and please let StreamYard have permission for your name. And we welcome your questions because I'm so excited to welcome Marc Bekoff. Marc is a professor emeritus of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology at the University of Colorado, Boulder. He has published 31 books, or 41, depending on how you count multi-volume encyclopedias. He has won many awards for his research on animal behavior, animal emotions, cognitive ethology, compassionate conservation, and animal protection, and has worked closely with Jane Goodall as co-chair of the ethics committee of the Jane Goodall Institute, and is a former Guggenheim Fellow. So, welcome, Marc. I'm so excited that you're here with us.
Well, thanks. I am too. This seems like a wonderful forum to get the good word out about animal protection and veganism and other topics. So thank you for having me.
Well, we are going to get the good word out here, and we want everyone to please leave us your questions and comments, because we were talking earlier, and it's very important that we get those questions answered, because, well, that's how we reach others. We want to know what you're thinking. So, Marc, you have had such an extensive career. When did you become vegan in the first place, and what led you to make this transition?
Well, I'm going to say sometime 25 or 24 years ago, but a while. I mean, my transition from, and I never was a huge carnivore, but into vegetarianism and veganism was motivated totally by ethics, not health reasons or anything like that. And really for years when I was not 100% vegan, I used to do volume and calorie analyses, and my diet was 99% vegan. And I think the only breach of veganism into vegetarianism was, maybe a slice of cheese every couple of weeks. And then a 12-year-old girl at an event said, well, why do you, if you don't do it all, if you don't eat a lot of it, why do you do any of it? And that was really what tripped me in. So the transition was really easy. I was a pretty high-end athlete, and I can't say I noticed that I was doing better, but I definitely wasn't doing worse. And, I just did it. I mean, honestly, it was no big transition. I was traveling a lot. And people said how it's so hard to do when you're active, or it's so hard to do when you travel a lot. And no, it's not. I always say, look, you can get pizza without cheese, and you can eat pasta, and I like French fries and potato chips. And, so anyway, that was basically it. But I really did it for ethical reasons. Yeah.
All right. Yes. And that makes a lot of sense. Did you have a lot of friends or family? I have dogs shaking their collars underneath me. Did you have a lot of friends or family of support when you first went vegan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the friends I have, vegan or not, are open to different lifestyles, if you will. I mean, nobody really was critical of it, and one of my family members was vegetarian and now vegan, but for 40 years. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm lucky because the people I hang out with are open to a lot of, quote, alternative lifestyles. Although as time goes on, vegetarianism and vegan, yeah, it's an alternative lifestyle, but it's less alternative than it was when I started going through it. People did wonder or worry about athletic performance because I was racing bicycles, which is a lot of energy and time. But like I said, I really, I didn't feel any different, and some people said, did you feel better? And in all honesty, I don't know, but I definitely didn't feel any kind of compromised endurance, if you will, or other, physical components of cycling.
Right. Well, that's very interesting. Because a lot of times people will say you're not going to get enough protein or you're going to be weak if you're an athlete. So definitely, I mean, looking at you, I mean, you're a good representative of that's not true.
Yeah, I don't understand why they say that, but I think that myth is, I mean, although places like the New York Times and other articles will write, other outlets, magazines will say you have to eat meat in order to be an athlete or active, that even if you're not particularly active, veganism doesn't work. And that's just absurd. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I think more and more people are learning that, although it's still called an alternative lifestyle, it's really not. And it's really an alternative to a horrific set of meal plans. But we don't need to get into that.
You're right. But yes. All right. So, well, how does the peace of not eating creatures manifest in your life today?
Well, I mean, other than, food plan, there's a lot of, there's 2 new books out because I write for Psychology Today and I just reviewed them. But there's a whole trend over the last, I'm going to say 10 years, it could be 15, it could be 5, that a vegan ethic is, or a vegan vision, as Matt Haldeman calls it in a recent book of his, really translates into a completely different view of the world, a more compassionate, empathic, kind view of the world. So when I think about a vegan ethic or a vegan vision, as Matthew calls it, it translates into a more compassionate lifestyle. And it's growing, and I think it's threatening to people who, make a lot of money producing junk food and animal-based, animal food and animal products. But I think it's coming along, and more people are realizing that it's a myth that you're going to have a complete dive in terms of your lifestyle and your physical and mental abilities. So I think that that's catching on really big time. So to me, just displacing veganism into a more broad-based vegan vision or vegan ethic is really a good way to go. I think it becomes less threatening to people too. I think people are threatened when they see people who say, I'm vegan and I have a great life, of which there's many, and there's also a good deal of unhealthy vegans. I try to explain that, you can eat a lot of vegan junk food and be unhealthy. But I really like that vegan umbrella. I wrote about it some years ago as a compassion umbrella, under which a whole lot of different aspects of one's lifestyle coalesce when you have this vegan vision of the world.
Right. And the vegan vision, some vegans are very sad and depressed about the animals. What would you tell that vegan that's can't even get up?
You mean because of the treatment of the animals?
Yes.
I just always say to them, just put out the good word. Don't be forceful because people people don't like to be told what to do. They don't like to be told who to eat or what to eat or who not to eat or what not to eat. But explain and see if you can get into a good dialogue with them. And I really think that at some point you sometimes have to pull the plug and agree to disagree and move on. I really believe that, because a lot of compassion and empathy fatigue comes from battling people who aren't going to change, and I'm not going to change. So if two people are together and they are talking and they agree that they're not going to change, it's just it's just better to say, okay, fine, I don't agree with you. You agree to disagree, and make sure you work with people who are open to change. Because I've written some articles that vegans don't need to make excuses about their lifestyle. It's not a radical lifestyle. It could be a healthy lifestyle, and it could be a lifestyle that you choose to show more compassion to other animals, other people, and the world. So I really do believe that. And maybe later when we get back, I'll tell you about what I call the 13 P's of rewilding, which to me it's a list that's grown over the years in terms of, if you will, activism and getting out the good word.
Yeah, we need to definitely talk about that.
Okay.
Because I know that's one thing. I'm with Climate Healers, and Dr. Silas Rao talks about rewilding this planet. We have to take action.
Yes, and since you mentioned it, I wrote a book in 2014 called "Rewilding Our Hearts," and that's where the P's of rewilding came. But part of rewilding, there's a lot of components of it, but it was about personal rewilding. Rewild your heart. Your heart tells you, sends messages to your brain, and then you perform actions that are more compassionate. And a book I wrote called The Animal Manifesto, the subtitle is 6 Reasons for Expanding Our Compassion Footprint, because all we were hearing about is carbon footprints. So there's a compassion footprint out there, and rewilding and taking into account the perspective of the non-human animals who are out there, some who are hunted, some who are served up as food, et cetera, et cetera. That's part of rewilding. And one aspect of rewilding is to take the animal's point of view. They don't want to be tortured. They don't want to be hunted. They don't want to be stalked. They want to be left alone to be the animals who they are. I mean, that would be the bumper sticker. Yep.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely rewilding our hearts, getting back to our essence, our natural essence.
Right. I mean, people have translated into some spiritual view, which is fine. But to me, it's just a down-home view. Enjoy the views you have, enjoy the animals you meet, enjoy the flowers you say hello to or the trees, and enjoy the people you meet, and be particularly sensitive to their point of view, whether you agree with it or not. Like I said, it was years ago when I realized that when I get into these kind of pissing matches with people, they're not going to change. I'm not going to change. Good. Find people who are open to change. And like I said, vegans, people who really care about animals, don't have to make any excuses for their points of view. There's nothing radical. To me, the radical view would be people who harm other animals and the earth. But that's usually accepted more as the mainstream, which is totally repulsive. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's why I sleep at night. I sleep well at night because I know I'm only dependent on myself. All right. I'm not responsible for anyone else. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm sharing the message, and I don't have to change everybody. I'll change the ones that are ready to be changed. It's not really me. The message will get out there to change them. So I love what you're saying about not forcing and letting go, and not, letting go. And we don't have to force everyone. We can't force anyone. So.
Right. Well, I honestly agree with you totally, Marquita, because, I don't like to be told what to do or what not to do. So to do other people not want to be told what to do and how to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And food is a very central point, because I've been learning this over the years. And in a book that I wrote with Jessica Pierce called The Animal's Agenda, we actually wrote about it, where food is the one thing over which a lot of people have control, and they don't want to lose control over who or what goes in their mouth. And I can understand it, because they feel very, very dominated, if you will, by the world at large, attitudes, lifestyles, and all that. But I agree. To me, the best thing is put it out there. Some people will grasp it, some won't. But you don't want to get overtired or suffer from the compassion or empathy fatigue, because you're working so hard to talk to people whose goal is to waste your time. I really feel that way. You know, they're asking questions, and then they really get in your face, and then you kind of, I shouldn't say you, but, you know, I kind of just say, I'm moving on. I want to talk to people from whom I can learn. And even if, you know, learning certain things, I mean, you know, doesn't mean I'm going to change, but I want to hear their point of view. And, you know, in a lot of activities, the best, you know, way to counter people who don't agree with you would be to learn how they're thinking and feeling. But once again, drawing the line and saying, okay, you're not going to change, I'm not going to change. Go have a good life.
Right. Leave that up to someone else. Yes, you're right.
I always say life's too long, not life's too short to deal with that kind of stuff.
That's true. Well, I want to ask you a question about animals. What animal? I mean, we all know that most of us can empathize. So I'm the leader of the animal ministry at my church, and it really focuses on cats and dogs, but I really bring in all the other animals. And so what would be, you know, when I'm speaking to them, maybe I'll go back and say, you know, I spoke with Marc Bekoff, and he told me that this animal, surprisingly to most people, is very emotional. You know, that most people wouldn't think about. This animal has a lot of emotions. What is one animal that I could go back to them and say, listen to what I learned?
Well, I mean, the skepticism about the emotional lives of animals and animal sentience is decreasing, not fast enough for me or you or probably most of your listeners. But like invertebrates, you know, lobsters don't like getting dropped in boiling water. In the UK, you know, there are, you know, crustaceans and other invertebrates, insects are protected under animal welfare laws. Because the obvious candidates for having rich and deep emotional lives would be mammals, but of course all vertebrates too. I mean, there's research about reptiles and amphibians and fishes and birds that show that they are deeply emotional beings. But a lot of it would come down to insects and other invertebrates. But the literature on insect sentience is just growing every day by leaps and bounds. So excuse me. So people tend to deny, if you will, emotions and sentience to animals who are very distant from us, like invertebrates. You know, but what I've discovered when I did back in April, the second edition of my book, The Emotional Lives of Animals, came out, and I added about 300 references and, you know, notes to the original version that came out in 2007, so some 17 years ago. And what I notice is, you know, there's no research that's been done over the past, say, 20 years, but surely even over the last decades, that make it more permissible to harm other animals. None of it. Because when you're writing, you know, I just as a diversion, I would make a list of, does this support animal welfare or animal well-being? Does it not? And there was not one check, and it does not support it. And that's important. So a lot of what we've learned, I call icing on the cake, because we've known about, you know, animal emotions, animal sentience for decades, if not centuries. But the reason I mention that is because science is important. I'm a scientist, but I'm not married to science. There's a lot of different ways of knowing. And so once again, there's been nothing we've learned in the last 15 to 20 years that would say, well, yeah, you think it was okay to mistreat animals who are visibly or behaviorally distant from humans, but no, it's not. In fact, the list of the biodiversity, I call it, of sentience and emotions is ever growing. And I'm sure as time goes on, we're going to be including many, many more animals who other people would have excluded are going to be included in the arena of being sentient and emotional animals.
Which animal do you feel like you resonate the most with?
I resonate with all of them.
So you're a multitude of all animals.
I mean, I do, I do. And I don't mean that in a self-serving way, but, I wonder there's a whole lot of research now on sentience and in spiders, for example, and, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? They have very highly evolved sensory systems. They have very complex patterns of social organization. And it would be ridiculous to think that it was all hardwired, that they're not thinking, feeling beings. And what I like about the comparative research into animals who, people might a priori exclude from the arena or the biodiversity of sentience and emotions, is how many people are now open to it and are doing work to protect these animals. Because there's got to be a practical side of it. I don't want to, it's useless to learn that animals who you thought weren't sentient or emotional and animals who feel pain, okay, we learned that, big deal. No, we learned it, so that means that we need to protect them. And slowly but surely that's happening. It's certainly not happening fast enough for me and probably for you and most, if not all, of the people listening now. But I think it's really important to recognize that the changes are occurring.
Yeah, I love that. I love that what you said about spiders, and I can relate to snakes because I volunteer at the Nature Center, and holding the snakes, I can feel that peacefulness with them. I feel the contentment when they rest and we sit in the sun together. I mean, just as I would a dog if I was holding a dog. I mean, that same thing. And it's really nice when people walk up and see the snake that I have and we talk. And I tell them I used to be afraid of snakes too, so that I can connect with them and understand. But it was because of my volunteering at the Nature Center that I had to thankfully overcome that. And
right. And when most people I know, I mean, when I say I know them, they've written to me, I don't maybe not know them personally, have experiences with animals like snakes who are very distant from us taxonomically, but also they don't have expressive faces and eyes and bodies like we do. Although between snake interactions, they might, and there's always sounds and odors to which we have zero access. But it's having experiences with these animals where people will say, there's no way that everything is hardwired and genetic and inborn. And the fact is, there is no way. But I don't expect people to understand fully, and I'm not sure I understand fully what snakes are thinking and feeling when they interact with one another, but they're certainly not automatons. And that's what we're learning about bees, for example, among other insects. They have feelings, and they do some of the most amazing cognitive tasks that we can only observe and then hope to explain, from the bee's point of view. Because I'm an ethologist, and basically I do a lot of field work on animals, and I'm always trying to take their point of view, not my or human or anthropocentric points of view. And it's working. Like I said, it's not working fast enough for me, but it's working.
Yeah, that's very important. What does that bee feel like or what is that bee thinking when they're buzzing around, right? And to look at it from the other animal's point of view, and just to imagine, like, I don't know what the bee would be thinking, but to even explore that is one step closer, to of compassion.
Well, yeah, because if we don't study and learn about those things, then there's a void, and so people will say, well, they don't think like us. Well, no, they don't necessarily think or feel like we do, but there's no reason we should be the standard against which other animals are compared. I call it arrogant anthropocentric speciesism. We make these hierarchies, and we're often placed by some people above and separate from other animals. And this would be, human exceptionalism, if you will. And
Right.
it's a very arrogant point of view, because there's things we can do or feel perhaps that other animals can't, and there's many things they can do and feel that we can't. So, just to be fair, you keep the door open. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And when we look closely, we see that we're very alike. There's an old elderly snake, and her skin is, you can see her skin is old, and she's kind of bent, because of arthritis. And so being gentle with her, just like we would with an elderly person, I mean, there's so many things there are so many similarities when we stop to look at them, and I'm just lucky because I volunteer at the Nature Center. So exploring the world and showing the little children, I mean, teaching our children.
Oh, well, I mean, getting to kids is the essence. I do a lot of work with Jane Goodall. She's a good friend and a colleague, and she has a Roots and Shoots program that I've been working closely with. And there's, it's in 100 countries. There's thousands of local groups. And it began focusing on animals, people, in the environment for kids, but it's expanded into assisted living facilities. I taught for 16 or 17 years at the Boulder County Jail courses on animal behavior, animal emotions, and compassionate conservation. And more people are expanding that audience either through Roots and Shoots or other organizations. But we need to get to the kids. We just need to focus there, because they're, Jane always says, we shouldn't be stealing their future, but that's what we are doing. I'm a very hopeful monster, if you will. I just really am hopeful about things, but there's a lot going on, and it's easy to lose hope. So, part of the activism, if you will, game, and I don't mean it as a game lightly, and I don't like calling it activism. I think it's more concern, is to focus on the areas and the people in whom you're interested and work there. Nobody can do everything. And once again, be nice, get the word out there, and there's no reason to compromise on meal plans or the way we're ill-treating a wounded world, and because the world is wounded, but always staying positive. And I've been working with some people. I mean, I'm not a psychologist or a counselor, but I learned early on in life from my dad was you play hard, you work hard, and you rest hard, and you need to take care of yourself if you're going to have enough energy to take care of other animals, non-human animals, and other people. So it's perfectly okay to just sit back and go, I mean, I'm exhausted, when I say me, but, I'm exhausted, I need a break, because then you come back stronger. But if you empty the tank, it's like driving a car and running out of gas. It's really hard to refuel and get going. So I think part of, for me at least, but I really know a lot of people who would agree, is self-care is important. You're doing a lot, you're being other extended, you're always giving. And sometimes it's frustrating. I know people say, I'm always giving, what am I getting? Well, what you're getting could be intangible, but don't get to that point where you run out of energy and then you just simply, you give up. And it's not a negative, people who go, oh, they gave up. No, they gave up because they put their whole heart and soul into what they're doing, and they have zero energy left. So, I always say, you fuel your car or whatever it is, you plug your car in, whatever, to refuel and get energy. Do it for yourself, but don't lose sight of the compassion and your vision of making the world a better place for other animals and humans.
Yes, exactly. And we are an animal, so we have to have compassion for ourselves also. We can't leave ourselves out of the equation.
No, we can't. We are animals, and of course, a lot of people. I mean, for ease of writing, I often put I'm writing something about non-human animals and in parens animals because but yeah, we are animals, and we're very closely related genetically and behaviorally to a lot of non-human animals. And when you're a wild animal, it's a tough life out there. And
Mm.
there's been research that shows that a lot of wild animals rest 85 or 90% of the time, but when they need to go get food or do what they need to do to be a card carrying member of their species, they have to have full energy, likewise to avoid being eaten or to avoid having your territory or your taken or your food taken. um, but rest is important, and sometimes it's really frustrating because there's so much to be done. But you're not going to get more done by working yourself to exhaustion and then just saying, I can't do this anymore. And there's a lot of people who have said that, and they're really wonderful, big-hearted people, but they're exhausted because they don't make their living helping other animals in the world, or other people for that matter. They make their living just doing other things. So balance is really critical. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Exactly. Yes. So, Mark, I know you have an animal cognition, emotions, and compassionate conservation Google group. Could you tell us about that? And this sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so Jane Goodall and I founded a group called Ethologists for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, I think in 2000 or something like that. And I posted material there, and Jane did too sometimes. I mean, the reason it no longer exists is because the software guy, because I don't have great computer skills, and I wouldn't think Jane would be upset to say that she doesn't have them either. Maybe they're better than I know, but we lost track of the guy who founded it, and the site was removed because when it came up for renewal, we could not get the okay from the person who founded it. So I just started this Google group on animal cognition, emotions, and compassionate conservation. People can sign up for it. You can find it on the web, and I post material there. It's not a discussion group, and I do it alone. Sadly, the woman who helped me a lot passed away, but I've kept it up, and I post material, most of which I agree with, but a lot which I don't agree with. But it's not a discussion group. And people say, well, why can't we have open discussions? Well, on some days, it feels like it's a full-time job just running the group and posting stuff. But if people want to, I don't know. If people want to run a discussion group, be my guest. I'm the messenger, and if you, can't, I don't know if there's a link. Somebody just posted something. But if you just do Bekoff Google Groups, you'll find it. And then I know people have been able to sign up on their own. But if it's difficult, just send me an email and I will add you to the group. But Google is very specific. So if you have a personal account or a non-quote Google related account, they may reject you and require you to have a Gmail account. Or something like that. So I'm warning you, because every now and again I try to add somebody and they don't have a Google related account or whatever it is. So I'm just saying that. Yeah.
Okay. And where can they email you, Mark?
Just at Marc Bekoff, marc.bekoff@gmail.com.
Okay. mark.bekoff@gmail.com.
And
All right.
if you want to be added to the group, just put that in the section, in the subject, because I get a lot of emails and I just don't want to lose it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes. And I do see some questions, and we'll get to those in just 1 minute. I wanted to, and so please put the questions in the chat. But I wanted to ask you real quick, what books are you working on now?
Jane and I are working on a young kids book about animal emotions, animal protection, which is fun to do. And I'm actually almost completing with with a co-author, a young adult teenage book on animal emotions. So those would be the two. And I'm excited because young kids, it'll have strong message. The one with Jane will have a strong message about animal protection and protecting the earth, because it's all related. And talk about roots and shoots. And the teenage book is really, it's a huge audience, and there's an amazing number of teens. Maybe it's from 6th grade till high school in America. I don't know what that would be overseas, who really are interested in animals, because they find them to be intriguing, and they don't want to eat them and harm them. And also because if we don't take care of animals in the earth for this age group, they're going to inherit a world that is really bad. So those would be the two projects. And then I see somebody said Google groups don't exist anymore. I don't know about that. I am a technical moron, but the group, I know that if you do a search for something, Bekoff animal emotions, animal cognition, you will come up with the group. Or I'll just add you to it. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So let me see. I wanted to just say hello to Nicole, who left that comment.
Yeah.
And Ellen is here from Sugar Grove. And then we also have, who else do we have? JJ from Vegan Knowledge. So, and we do have a question from Nicole. She's saying, Dr. Marc Bekoff, are you related to Woody Harrelson?
He's an actor, I think.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, to be honest with you, no, I not to the best of my knowledge, but somebody else asked me that. And then I see Nicole wrote, is ETA a branch of PETA? No, it's not. But obviously there's a nice, they're very similar terms. No, I mean, Jane and I founded this group so to get people who are interested in animal behavior and ethology to treat animals better. Right. So we don't have, you could say we don't have the broad expanse of PETA, but like I said, it's not a question. It's not, we just don't exist anymore because Yahoo wouldn't renew it because we couldn't find the founder of ETA. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, here's another question. Do you know of alternatives to feeding snakes rodents?
I know some people who have snakes and don't feed rodents to them, but you know a lot more about snakes than I do, don't you?
I'm not a snake expert. I know on hands, other than that, yes. But I don't know. I mean, that's one reason I always would love to have a snake, but there's no way I could feed a snake an animal. So yeah, I don't know.
Do a Google search for that, and I'm shocked when I get questions. I mean, when I'm asked questions like that, I'm not going to do it now since I'm on with you all. But when I get questions like that, I'm really shocked about how many non-animal alternatives there are. So Andrew Knight, who's a veterinarian, lives in the UK now, but he's from Australia, has done so much research on vegan diets for dogs and cats. And vegan dogs and cats can have healthy and long lives. So that would be a wonderful thing to learn, what would be an alternative. But I just don't know about snake food. Yeah.
Right. Well, we have another joiner. Madison is here, a vegan activist. So, and then Nicole's an illustrator. So we got a lot of, and those are great ways to get the vegan word out and whatever you're doing,
Yeah, this is great. I mean, what I love doing about, these kinds of talks is, who is it? Nicole just said, I am an illustrator. Yeah. You need to build community. That's one of the biggest things. And unfortunately in the animal protection movement, there's a lot of arguments among people who have common goals, but go about it differently. So my frank opinion is don't fight one another, because when you fight against one another or you disagree really, vehemently, then the other side just says, look, you all can't agree. Why should we agree with you? So I accept the fact that I have certain views of animals that might be shared by other people, but they may say, well, why don't you do this and that about it? Because it's not me, or I don't feel comfortable doing it. So the common goals of protecting other animals has to be, for me, the motivator for working hand in hand with people. And sometimes people working for animals and our planet disagree on certain things. And well, of course they do. I mean, we're all humans and there's going to be disagreements. But to me, the worst thing is for people with the common goals, like if we're talking about animal rights, animal protection, to really disagree publicly about certain things, because I know personally, and I know people, others who would agree, is then your opponents, quote, say, if you can't agree on certain things, why should we listen to you? And, they've got a point there. So I just figured that, human beings, and we're going to have disagreements, but just get through them and do the work about which you're passionate, which would be protecting and not harming and killing other animals and our planet, which needs a lot of help, by the way. Yeah.
Well, that's very true. I just took a course on movements, how to create a movement. And the worst thing for a movement is this infighting. I mean, because nobody can get anywhere. And that's a lot of wasted energy. We have to understand exactly like you're saying. We don't have to agree on everything, but we have to keep our eye on the goal, which is helping animals. And when we stray off of that goal, that's when, there's no way to really uplift when we all come together. Just think about it. If we weren't fighting, that would be more people coming together. And oh my gosh, what can we do when we all come together?
No, absolutely. I just find myself, this might be a kind of a nice segue into what I call the 13 P's of rewilding. I'll just read them to you because the list has grown. But you can apply this to working with people with whom you radically disagree, and people with whom you might disagree, but not quite as radically. So the 13 P's of rewilding would be being proactive, positive, persistent, patient, peaceful, practical, powerful, passionate, playful, present, principled, proud, and polite. And what they're all stressing is being nice. That's all. And I'll tell you something that I think is really important. And maybe, once again, I'm not a psychologist, but working with prisoners, there's a process called disarming. And it's not a disingenuous process, but it would be like if you had work done in your house and you go, well, I really like the cabinets you put in, but I don't like the paint job or whatever. You're saying something positive because there usually is something positive to say, and then offering, if you will, the criticism, if you will. And I find that a lot of people who really want to be combative about veganism or animal activism, come at you. And the first thing I say is, you need to treat me with respect, just like you would be just like you want to be treated with respect. And if you don't want to treat my views and me personally with respect and being polite and blah, 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 then we have nothing to talk about because you're not going to get anywhere. So it's called disarming. And what I do, and it's not disingenuous. People will say, oh, you're just trying to get your foot in the door. No, not at all. We've got big problems with some of the wolves who have been reintroduced to Colorado over the last year. And there's people who hate them, and there's people who love them, and there's people who are kind of ambiguous about their feelings about having a carnivore like wolves here. But that's my field of expertise, is carnivore behavior. And so I really learned when I get really nasty, vulgar emails, I don't answer them because I always say life's too long and I've got other things to do. But every now and again, I'll get an email, and I got one last week that it was very informed. The person who wrote it is obviously brilliant, bright, but I didn't like the tone. So I wrote back to them and I say, you wrote to me. If you want to engage with me, you're going to have to be nice to me and I will be nice to you. It takes too much energy. And they wrote back, and we've had a really, really good discussion. And part of the discussion is based on the fact that neither he is going to change and neither I'm going to change. But I'd like to learn more about why he has his views about the wolves and I have mine. It's been very instructive. So once again, because I know there's a lot of people here who are very activist oriented, is, getting in these pissing matches with people isn't going to go anywhere. And set bounds. I think it's critical to set bounds and go, I'll listen. A woman wrote me a few weeks ago, and once again, she said, I hate wolves, but they're here, and I'm going to try to live with them and not promote harming or killing them. And my son is so excited to have them. What do you think? And I said, I think we're really lucky to have the wolves on ground here. I understand where you're coming from, which I do. I don't agree with your views, but let your son lead the way, because he is really excited to have the wolves here. So we've had a nice discussion. Are we going to agree on having the wolves here? No, never. But it's been a very polite discussion, and I've learned a lot from this woman why she doesn't want wolves here. And that's important. I mean, because in the end, the wolves are the main stakeholders, and they're the ones who are going to suffer when people go out to harm and kill them. So, nothing's lost by being nice. And it's also disarming, to say, because I have written to people to say, you and I are not going to be on the same page. But like I said, you be nice to me and I'll be nice to you. But it doesn't necessarily mean we will ever find much, if any, common ground.
Right. Well, I like that. I mean, going ahead and putting it out there so it's not like an elephant in the room, right? And
yep.
And also just saying, you know what, we're going to have a respectful, kind conversation.
That's right. And you could agree to disagree, because I had an email last week from somebody, so about the wolves once again, because it's a hot item here, and wolves are, in danger. Their lives are in danger. Colorado Parks and Wildlife really did a disastrous move of basically demolishing the first breeding pack of wolves in 90 years. And this guy said, well, it's only the animal activists who voted to bring wolves back in. And 1.5 million people voted. The chance of 1%, which would be 1,500 people labeling themselves as animal rights activists, is very low. So that was something I wrote back. And I said, no, it wasn't only animal rights activists. And I don't think there's 1,500 people in Colorado who would label themselves that, especially who voted for bring the wolves back. But I said, there's environmental, ecological concerns about biodiversity, et cetera, and that's why they voted to bring the wolves back. And by the way, people who live on the West Slope, because it was kind of like a demographic type of vote to some extent, but there were a lot of people who live on the West Slope where the wolves were released who were for it. So once again, the main thing is just being really, really careful of labeling other people, because most individuals are rather complex, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but they have views. And once again, so I've learned a lot from interacting with people in a polite, nice way, with whom I totally disagree. And of course, they totally disagree with me, because somebody wrote and said, oh, it's just a bunch of you vegans who voted to have the wolves here. And I said, I guarantee you that is not true. Of the 1.5 million people who voted for the wolves, if you'd be lucky to find 10,000 vegans among them. I mean, there may be more than 10,000 vegans in Colorado, but a lot of them voted to bring the wolves back because of ecological, reasons, if you will. So, and somebody wrote back to me and said, wow, thanks for your nice email. I wasn't planning to be as polite with you. So I just wrote back and I said, if you're not nice to me, I'm not interacting with you. And they wrote back a thumbs up. And so no, but I really mean this, once again, I've learned a lot from them, but I'll never agree with them. But it was disarming to them for me to say, I want to learn about how you feel about the wolves, which once again spills into other areas of animal protection. But you're going to be nice to me and I will be nice to you. So I always say to people, I don't say it. I just don't answer emails that are in my face. Some are very vulgar. And then, of course, they write back and say, did you get my email? And I don't write back. And after somebody asked me, how many do you get? And I think it's between 3 and 5. And then I don't hear from them again, which is lovely because I want to work for the animals, not against people. And that's another strong bumper sticker that I've really adhered to for years is I'm working for the non-humans. I'm not working against other people, because the opponents have a lot of time and energy to try to derail you. And we need to focus, and focus is critical. And part of that focus is always working for the non-humans and Earth, not working against these people who just want to derail you. And so, you know, I just will go derail someone else. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think, well, when people really understand, I mean, when we're working for the non-humans, we're helping the humans.
Well, there's this whole movement called One Health, and it's still a little too human oriented for me. But the mission of One Health is basically to work for humans, other animals, and Earth. And there's a lot of research coming out from conservation psychologists and others that basically showed caring for other animals is very helpful for caring about ourselves. You know, and some people will say, well, you know, I really want them to I want them to care about the animals, not necessarily because it helps us. My view is, and I think the animals' point of view would be, if they're doing stuff to protect us, that's fine. I don't really care about their motivation. But the door is always open there to explain to them why caring for animals and the animals themselves is a really powerful way to go about it. But, you know, I have friends who say, well, I won't do certain things now because I know there are breeding pairs of birds or other animals. Good. Yeah, I hope you care about the breeding animals, but if you don't, that's good, because at least you won't be harassing these animals at a very critical time in their lives when they're trying to make babies and make more of themselves. You know, so it always seems to me there's a nice road into, or there's a way of being nice when you have disagreements. It's not easy all the time, but I think setting those boundaries for me has been really, really important. I'm not going to talk to you unless you're nice to me and we agree to disagree. But I'm sure maybe among the people listening now, there's people who have had the same experience where you just go, the hell with it. I'm done. I'm not changing. You're not changing. And that's it. So anyway, yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I can really resonate with what you're saying about the wolves, because I think about the coyotes and the people that I know and who just hate the coyotes because they say they kill their cats and all this. And I feel bad for the cats. And I have a small dog who, if he was killed, I would feel sad. However, I would not blame the coyote. I realize that they're here for a reason, and we've pushed them here on our land. So it's, you know, I mean, my heart goes out to all of them. And I really try to be gentle when I talk to people about their fears about coyotes, because that's the only way that it's going to work. I attack them like coyotes. Oh, they deserve to be here. And, you know, too bad for your cat. And then forget it. I've lost everybody.
No, I agree, because I really, you know, I've been studying carnivores for decades. I did a long-term field work on coyotes in Wyoming. You're absolutely right. They have a valid point of view for them. And, you know, my message would be, take into account the coyote's perspective, maybe make little changes in your routine. I mean, when I lived in the mountains outside of Boulder, I mean, I had cougars and black bears and coyotes and foxes right at my door. And I happened to meet cougars or mountain lions 3 times. I was within a meter of them. And people said, well, that was really cool. No, there was nothing cool about it. But I was saying this in an interview a few days ago, that over the course of decades, between me and the very few houses that were up there, there had not been one single injurious encounter between our dogs and any of the bears and cougars and coyotes. And part of it was luck. I wouldn't say anything else. Part of it was respecting the fact that these animals had a right to live there. and we just needed to change our ways when they were making babies or when they were hunting or something like that. So coexistence, peaceful coexistence is the bottom line. Yeah.
Exactly, right. We have to be aware. If you have a cat, then either be outside with your cat when your cat's going to be there, or don't leave your cat outside alone, right? Just like my little dog. So, yes. And then Nicole is saying this great organization in Canada to check out.
Which organization is that? I'm looking now.
CoyoteWatchCanada.com.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Canada's got a lot of great people working for animals. I'm looking up the name of one of them. Well, one of them is called Zoo Check Canada. So if you're in Canada and you do a search, you can. There's been I'm just using this as an example. There's been a major problem at the Calgary Zoo. Animals dying, animals getting injured. And if you just do a search for Calgary Zoo, I mean, one of the articles appeared either early this morning or last night. There's a great group called Zoo Check Canada that works on zoo issues. There's an amazing number of animal lawyers doing animal law in Canada and in the States and over across the world. But Canada's got a really good handle on a lot of these things. Is it moving fast enough? Absolutely not. But are they moving in the right direction? And are these animal lawyers or people doing animal laws compassionate and really good? They are really good, and they are really bright. So, yeah. And lots of countries have them.
That's good to know. Definitely. We need to all keep our eyes open and be voices for animals. So, Mark, I realize that you only have an hour here where we're scheduled for an hour. So is there anything, first of all, we want to let everyone know where they can reach you. And I also want to thank Nicole, Marie, Madison, JJ, and Ellen for watching. And I also want to remind people to go to www.all-creatures.org to check out the hundreds of thousands of pages of free resources updated daily, 7 days a week without break, or sign up for our newsletter, and be sure to search vegan churches on our site to find vegan faith-based resources near you. And if you know of a resource that's not on our list, please reach out to our executive director, Tams, at all-creatures.org. So, Mark, let us know where your final words, and also where everyone can reach you.
Well, they can email me. Just be patient. I do answer emails, but some get lost, and I have to confess that someone set it up for me because I'm a tech moron. I have a pretty strong filtering out vulgarities and other words. Yeah, just mark.bekoff@gmail.com. And my homepage is markbekoff.com. Yeah.
Great. And we're looking forward to the next two books. And
yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing them. I mean, so personally for me, and there's this second edition of The Emotional Lives of Animals, and there's this wonderful birthday book we gave to Jane Goodall. She turned 90 in April, and it was a secret, and we were so afraid that that the word would get out that we gave it to her. We gave it to her around New Year's Eve last year. We gave her an early copy of the book. It wasn't the final copy. And I did the book with a guy named Koen Margot, who lives in Belgium. So he and I co-chair the ethics committee, because for years I was the ethics committee, and Jane would say, "What do you think?" And we'd have discussions. Tom Mangelson, who's a famous photographer, wildlife photographer, so he did the covers and just donated 20 or so pictures of Jane. And it was just, and there's a lot of really great entries in there. What we love about the book, and it's a very personal book, and in the description of the book, we're presenting the real Jane. Jane has an amazing sense of humor. She's a an amazingly brilliant, caring woman. And there's really interesting essays in there from a lot of high-end people like Joaquin Phoenix and his partner or wife, Rooney Mara, Brian May of Queen, who's a wonderful activist, founder of the rock group Queen, and just a lot of down-home people, including people who were on the ground with Jane in 1960. So that would be 64 years ago when she first went to Gombe. So the reason I mentioned the book, you can find it on Amazon or wherever you buy books, is it really exposes or shows Jane. I don't mean exposing in a negative way, of course, who she is. And she's an amazing woman. And it's such a treat to be a good friend and to work with her. And there's a lot of things in there that nobody knew about before, although some of us knew about them, but they had never been compiled. But a lot of the discussion we're having today is in the second edition of The Emotional Lives of Animals, because I felt the time was right to get it out, the new research, but get out a message that I feel is relatively non-compromising to me, is we need to do better for other animals and their homes. We just need to do better. We have to stop torturing animals in labs. We have to stop serving animals up as food. We need to stop animals in entertainment who are abused when they're forced to entertain us. But wild animals as well, because I'm a field biologist, and there's a lot of mistreatment of wild animals, even by people who want to study them. And so right now, it's a time for action on behalf of animals, and that's basically the message of the book. Is talk is cheap. We need to get people out there and act, and part of actions would be being overt about it and working against people and organizations who abuse animals. But part of it is in your own heart. Once again, we're all being rewilded. I mean, I admit it's really easy to be in the outdoors in Colorado, a lot easier. But I'm working with people who live in cities, and some years ago, a woman living in a high rise in Chicago put plants on the roof of her apartment building, and it attracted all sorts of birds and insects. And I have not had contact with her recently, but in the middle of Chicago, she founded a rewilding group, and they read my book, which was great. I was really pleased about that, but we had wonderful discussions. So there's this group called Biophilic Cities, making them more biodiverse and friendly. So you can do it no matter where you live. So, and number one, and number two, thank you all for coming. I mean, there's just nothing I'd rather do more than talk with people, not necessarily who always agree with me, but talk with people who really want to make the lives of non-human animals better in all sorts of venues, including in your neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And yes, we all can make a difference, whether it's an hour a week or 2 or 3, every little minute counts. So yes, and don't wear yourselves out, like Mark said. Have compassion for yourself, have self-compassion, and take time. And yes, you've given us such great information. We're so blessed to have you here with us, Mark. So yeah. Thank you all very much. And we'll have to have you come back again.
Yeah, this is great. No, I love these interactive, informal sessions. There's enough academic fill in the blank out there, but we need down home, on the ground, grassroots movements expressing compassion and respect, because if you don't put it out there, you're not going to get it back. And once again, sending the message that caring about animals and their homes, dietary, if you will, and ecologically and behaviorally, and however you want to cash it out, is really not radical. I mean, that message sounds so simple, but it's one I've been using for a really long time, and it's a way to get people in, so they don't just write you off as some radical animal rightist who doesn't care about humans. Turns out more people who care about animals care about humans than those who are human-centric who care about animals. It's a fact, and stuff. So, well, thank you all. And wherever you are, I hope you have a good night, a good day, or a good evening, and we can go from there. So, thank you very much.
Thank you all. And thank you, Johnny. I just saw you joining, and compassion is the key. So yes, and Mark, we'll have you back again soon. Y'all have a beautiful, blessed day. Bye-bye, everybody.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.